Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of AA Entertainment. About a year ago, I uploaded a video about my favorite actor of all time, Lon Chaney Sr., and my 10 personal favorite films from him. And right now, that is my most viewed video with over 2.5 thousand views. So for today, in the spirit of Halloween, I will be talking about my second favorite actor of all time, Bela Lugosi. So for today, here are my top 10 favorite films from Bela Dracula Lugosi. At number 10, Murders in the Rue Morgue. During the 1930s, when studios were out of ideas for movies about werewolves, vampires, and Frankenstein's monster, they turned to the OG master of macabre, Edgar Allan Poe. Based liberally on the classic detective story, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Bela Lugosi stars as Dr. Miracle, a strange and foreign scientist with a circus act with a gorilla as the star of the show. When he's not luring an audience to a circus tent, he creeps around the dark and foggy streets of Paris at night, looking for women whom he can experiment on in hopes of transfusing blood between humans and apes. Why? Because it's Bela Lugosi, that's why. Of course this usually fails and bodies start to pile up. He sets eyes on the girlfriend of Monsieur Dupin, Camille. Dr. Miracle is dead set on kidnapping Camille, and with a gorilla sidekick, this should go off without a hitch. This was of course a controversial film upon release, shaking up the censor board. At number 9, Glen or Glenda. Listen, this is my show, and these videos are my opinion, and Glen or Glenda is one of the greatest cult classics of all time. Bela Lugosi stars in this film, written and directed by, and starring former Marine Edward D. Wood Jr. As we all learned from the amazing Tim Burton film, the original title was I Changed My Sex, and that's pretty much the whole movie. Glen or Glenda is a surprisingly progressive film from the 1950s, as it not only puts us in the shoes of a transvestite, but also shines an understanding and sympathetic light on the LGBTQ community. However, I can't say much for the other 50% of the movie, where we have Bela Lugosi reciting really unsettling and dark poetry with no meaning, as we cut to a whole bunch of random scenes that really make no sense. What can I say? It's a cult film and it doesn't make much sense outside of the educational aspects, but it's one of David Lynch's favorite films of all time, so just sit back and enjoy. At number 8, The Black Cat. Featuring the gruesome twosome, Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff in one of their several famous collaborations. Although The Black Cat shares the title of the famous Edgar Allan Poe short story and even states that in the opening credits, this has nothing to do whatsoever with a short story, but it's still a damn good movie. Bela Lugosi stars as Dr. Verdigast, a melancholic widow who lost his wife during World War I. He joins a newlywed couple on their honeymoon in his homeland of Hungary. When the car crashes and kills the driver, they seek shelter at the home of Polzig, played by Boris Karloff, who turned Verdigast to enemy soldiers and had him locked up in a Siberian prison camp. Coming back to his war-torn homeland and struggling to find the whereabouts of his long-lost wife are the least of his worries when it comes to like Polzig as a necrophiliac Satanist who keeps the corpses of women he slept with in glass coffins. Spoiler alert, Karloff gets skinned the fuck alive by Lugosi at the end of this movie. At number 7, The Raven. Another Universal Studios film, supposedly based on a work by Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven has absolutely nothing to do with the poem, but still, no complaints. And I love Edgar Allan Poe. Dr. Verlin is again a melancholic Bela Lugosi, but this time he went to med school and is now a well-renowned surgeon. Seriously, Mr. Lugosi, I love you, man, but who the fuck would trust Bela Lugosi to give them a surgery? After agreeing to perform a life-saving operation on a young girl named Jean, who was severely injured in a car accident, Lugosi falls head over heels in love with her. Although Dr. Berlin is really good at cutting people up and sewing them back together, he's not that experienced at handling rejection. Like most guys who are turned down by their crushes, he builds himself a functioning torture chamber. I did the same thing when my high school crush turned me down for prom. While building a torture chamber, Dr. Verlin agrees to get Karloff, a criminal on the run, plastic surgery so the cops can't catch him. Apparently getting skinned alive wasn't enough to convince Boris Karloff not to trust Lugosi with the knife. Enlisting Karloff as his partner in crime, Lugosi sets his eyes on Jean's father so he can torture him just because. Oh, and by the way, apparently censors found this film way too morbid and grim for audiences in 1935. Gee, I wonder why. At number 6, The Ape Man. Again, my channel, my opinion. I fucking love this movie, and it holds so much nostalgia for me. I remember staying home from school when I was 9 because I was sick and watched this movie. Bela Lugosi stars as Dr. Brewster, a scientist who, accidentally, turned himself into a half-human, half-ape creature, pretty much a reverse island of Dr. Moreau. Although I honestly haven't seen this movie in years, I still remember it very fondly, especially the cinematic ending, and although most people talk negatively about it for its absurdity, come on, it's Bela Lugosi as a man-turned-gorilla. What more could you ask for? Also, what the fuck is this? At number 5, White Zombie. Lugosi stars as a subtly named antagonist, Murder Legendre, a plantation owner in Haiti who commands an army of pre-George A. Romero zombies possessed by Haitian voodoo. And just like Dracula, Murder seems to hold a spell over the newlywed Madeline and insists on making her his bride. White Zombie is another film that holds a certain place in my heart, as I remember watching it when I was 7 or 8 and was scarred for life when I saw that infamous scene where the zombie slave falls into the wheat grinder and the noise and image never left me. I watch this every year at least once around Halloween and have a blast each time I watch it. It was also the name of Rob Zombie's first band, and I love Rob Zombie, both for his music and his films, especially his music. At number 4, Dracula. Based on the play that was based on the novel, Dracula is a milestone in cinema history. Not only was it a massive boost for two of Hollywood's most notable careers, those of Bela Lugosi and director Todd Browning, but it was also the film that kickstarted Universal Studios' horror movie craze. Dracula proved to be such a major success for the new and relatively unknown Hungarian actor Bela Lugosi, to the point most films he starred in listed him as Bela Dracula Lugosi. Although it's not one of my favorites, despite me having mentioned it in my favorite horror films video, its impact on cinema in general is too big to ignore. I also had the honors of seeing it not once, but twice in theaters, including the Spanish version. At number 3, Invisible Ghost. Lugosi stars as widower Charles Kessler. Although grief-stricken over the supposed death of his wife, to the point he holds dinners for him and her ghost, Charles Kessler is an incredibly kind and down-to-earth man who treats everybody, including his butler and servants, with the utmost respect. The downside is that Kessler is a somnambulist who has a tendency to murder people in his sleep. That and his wife isn't really dead. After a brutal altercation, his wife ran away from him fearing for her life. Looking nothing like the way she did when she was his wife and without any memory whatsoever, two of Kessler's servants help hide her in a shed in which she escapes from every night, haunting the dark woods and the home of her husband at night, setting him off on a somnambulistic murder sprees. It's a shame nobody talks about Invisible Ghost, because it is genuinely Lugosi's most complex and emotional performance. At number 2, The Gorilla. Starring the Ritz brothers as dim-witted detectives sent to the home of the wealthy Walter Stevens after he receives a threat from the serial killer, the Gorilla. After he goes missing, the cloddish detectives search the house for clues as more people begin to mysteriously disappear. Even though Bela Lugosi stars in the minor role of the butler, he still chews up every scene he's in, and his very presence adds layers to the story, as his seriousness is a great balance for the constant slapstick, which I also have no problems with. I absolutely love a one-setting murder mystery, and this film absolutely leaves me perfectly satiated each time I watch it. At number 1, Mark of the Vampire. Directed by the OG Hollywood Prince of Darkness, Todd Browning does a pretty bang-up job at remaking his now-lost 1927 masterpiece London After Midnight, this time with an all-star cast including Lionel Atwell and Lionel Barrymore. The murder of Sir Carol Borotyne leaves everybody shook when a mysterious and spooky, okay, let's be honest with ourselves, when the new hottest Hollywood couple, Bela Dracula Lugosi and his goth vampire princess, move into a haunted castle, their very presence adds to everybody's anxiety and serve as red herrings for the murder of Sir Carol. Not only is this an amazing and faithful remake to the single most sought-after film of all time by its original director, but the atmosphere is nothing short of pure dreamlike and ghost-like and eerie all around. Mark of the Vampire is an absolute must-see, and I ain't gonna lie, I prefer this to Dracula. Thank you so much for watching this, ladies and gentlemen. And stick around for more spooky videos for this month. And also, please comment down below what your favorite Bela Lugosi movie is.